Professor Todd Donovan teaches political science at Western Washington University. Professor Donovan was in Iowa in February for Barack Obama's big win in the Democratic caucuses. Today we're discussing the 2008 elections and Washington's upcoming February 9th caucus, plus the state's Republican primary on February 19th. Professor Donovan, thanks for being a guest on Northwest Notebook. Now, before we get to Washington politics, let's talk about your trip to Iowa. What was that like?
That was retail politics at its finest, I guess is how they put it. It is really amazing to see. I know I was only there for less than a day before the actual caucus and then the day of the caucus, and I think I met 3 presidential candidates, and Elizabeth Edwards sat down and chatted with the group I was with, of 4 people having pizza for about 5 minutes.
Very retail.
Yeah, and there are reporters everywhere. That's what you don't see on the television is there's the candidate and there's 100 reporters behind them all. But they take a lot of pride in the fact that they actually get to talk to people, and they put the voters put them on the spot, and the turnout was amazing, probably double what they had 4 years ago, both for the Republicans and the Democrats.
Now, the Democrats have a caucus in this state on February 9th. The Republicans have a primary. Now, I still think a lot of people don't know the difference. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, and I think the Republicans have a caucus and a primary. I think they're doing half their delegates
in the caucus, right,
and then half through the primary. The Democrats, all the delegates who are going to be going to the national convention are being selected through the caucuses. So, the main difference is a primary, the ballot shows up in the mail. If you got a stamp, you mark your choice and send it off. It's pretty easy to do. But that we're having that primary. There's not a lot at stake, at least for the Democrats. The caucus is a bit more of an investment in time. You attend. I think they start at, I want to say 11 o'clock. Don't look that up. But you probably have to stay there for at least an hour or so to make sure that your preference counts. But it's much more interactive. You're talking with your neighbors. If you're supporting a candidate that isn't viable, at least in Iowa, then you have to cut deals, or people will approach you to try to get you to come over and support their person. But you physically stand there and show your support for a candidate.
Now, when you say viable, what exactly do you mean?
Depending on the state, the rules would be that if your group of people supporting the candidate is less than 15% of the total people in your precinct, then you don't get a delegate from that precinct. So you have to go and move over to one of the other candidates.
So if you're a newbie to the process and you're participating in a caucus, don't expect us to show up and go home. This is going to be a process.
It's a process. It's not it's not that demanding. There's a lot more going on than just showing your support for a candidate. But the people who just want to show up, sign in, stand for the first vote count for their candidate, it's more than voting, but it probably wouldn't take more than an hour.
Your vote is not secret either.
No, it's not secret, and it's not really counted either. But it's a whole other story. What they actually count at the end of the day is how many delegates are elected onto the county conventions that'll be held weeks after that. But it's an open process. It's just not necessarily one where they count stuff up like we might expect.
On January 8th, Hillary Clinton pulled what's called an upset victory in New Hampshire. She was down double digits in all the polls, and you're into polling.
Yeah.
This had to shock you that she won the primary. Barack Obama had a double-digit lead. What happened?
No, I wouldn't say it would shock me, because first there was only one poll that had a double-digit lead, but that somehow got magnified over time. The polls had Obama up by about 38 to 30. He got about 38%. She got way more than 30%, so they really underestimated her support. Although, if you could look back a few weeks, she was at 39% a couple weeks ago. She's at 39% in November. I'm sorry, in December. So there was a blip down and a blip up. What the big mystery, I guess people will be sorting out for weeks, is where'd that extra 9% come from? And I think Democrats were mobilized in ways that, traditional Democrats came out. Women really swung to her. That moment the day before the vote, where was it 2 days before, where she showed some emotion,
right?
And it was not like the Ed Muskie kind of crying. It was a very sort of sincere show of emotion,
right?
And at least anecdotally, people are saying that really helped her. But both, she finished right about where she started. Obama trended up, so they both ended up in the high 30s.
And on the Republican side, McCain,
who was just nowhere a couple months before, and he was really low in both national polls and New Hampshire a couple months before New Hampshire. That's the big comeback. That's the big story in terms of polling. The polls actually sort of showed that one coming, though. But yeah, so he beat Romney by what, 8 points?
Something like that. Yeah. Do you think it really is that wide open? I mean, we've had all sorts of different winners already.
Yeah, for the Republicans, I think more so than the Democrats. The academic geeks like me who try to forecast and model these nomination processes, the amount of money you have before Iowa even goes, and your standing in the national polls before Iowa, really, regardless of what happens. I mean, Iowa, New Hampshire matter, but that inertia is really hard to beat. Even if Obama wins both Iowa, New Hampshire, or Huckabee wins both Iowa, New Hampshire, if there's a clear national frontrunner, that person's got a really good chance. So we would expect Clinton's probably got a pretty good, strong shot. The Republicans, though, it's much more divided up, much more mysterious about what's going to happen between when we go in Washington and
now Washington could actually matter.
Yeah, Washington could actually matter, and depending on how the results shake out, there could even be a convention that would matter. But yeah, I mean, if the dust hasn't settled by the time Washington goes, maybe candidates, we will matter in that people are going to want these delegates. Whether the candidates will actually fly all the way across the country to come here, that's another thing.
Western Washington University Professor Todd Donovan, thanks for being a guest on Northwest Notebook.
Well, thanks for having me.